Hello and welcome to the Northern Myths podcast, where we explore the myths and legends of Northern Europe from an archetypal perspective. I'm Luke DeWolf.
And I'm Dan Larrabee.
Today, you might have noticed that we're coming to you a little bit differently than before. If you're on video, you can see we're not in the same recording space, and that is due to ongoing COVID-19 lockdowns in our area. But we have something very special for you today that we got our act together and figured out how to podcast remotely just for this. We're happy to be speaking with, for the second time, from the band Wardruna, Einar Selvik. I'm really excited about this one, Dan.
Oh, me too. This will be so good to talk to him again and to hear about his new album.
His new album, exactly. Kvitravn, coming out on January 22nd, which, if our release dates end up lining up as we hope, will be 2 days after this episode is released. So lots to look forward to. And there's already a few songs on YouTube. So if you're listening to this right away, you can already hear a few of the songs. So we'll talk about that a bit later. But yeah, the album coming out in just a few days. This is exciting.
It is. I've seen some early reviews too, and they're terrific. I think one of them called it a career-defining album, which is like shocking because the other albums are so amazing that, well, I just can't wait to hear this and hear what he's got to say now.
I know, right? Considering the first three albums of Wardruna are like basically classics now if you're into this kind of thing, and then and also the Scald album was excellent too, and so yeah, this one coming up, we've been given a little bit of a preview ourselves, and yeah, it's sounding quite good. So really looking forward to talking to Einar about the new album and maybe a few other things. We've got he's busy, but we've got just about an hour with him, so we're really excited to talk with him. And
Absolutely.
And before we dive in, just a quick reminder, if you'd like to connect with us, the best way to do that is on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. And we're also on Patreon, and that's the best way that you can support us if you so choose. We only charge when there's a new episode coming out. So over the course of COVID and things, our schedule has been a little bit irregular, but we don't charge if we're not producing episodes. So that's a good thing there. And finally, we'd like to give a shout out to our friends at Grimfrost. They're our favorite source for Viking merchandise, whether it's clothes, modern clothes, gym clothes, reenactment gear, things like that. They make drinking horns. They have beard oils, things like that. We both like their beard oils. Lots of great stuff from Grimfrost. If you're a fan of this show, I'm sure you can find something you like there. So go to grimfrost.com and join the horde. Okay, and I think with that, we're just about ready to hop over to our next call and get on the line with Einar. Welcome to the show, Einar. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you've got the new album coming out in just about a week here. I'm sure that must be exciting for you at this point. We've heard a little bit of preview, and it's sounding really good. So I'm sure you're excited.
Yeah, it's always it's always exciting to put new music out into the world. It's kind of it's always a little bit strange to sort of put something you've been working on for such a long time and then releasing it out into the world and where it lives its own life. In many ways, and yeah, it's your head on the block in a way, but that's something that's part of the game, I guess.
Makes sense. Well, and you're building off a significant body of work currently with the combination of your past Wardruna albums, some of your other projects. You've got quite a bit out there already. How is this album comparing to your past work?
I feel in many ways it's a continuation of at least the previous Wardruna albums, both musically and thematically. In many ways, it's nature and our relation to it has always been very central, and this album sort of it continues to wander in that realm, but and musically it's the same. It's the same creative concept supporting it, where it is the themes themselves that sort of define the instrumental needs or the sounds I use, where I record, when I record, language, etc. And also in I would say that perhaps the difference lies in that I kind of zoom more into detail on this album, dig perhaps a little bit deeper into with a higher focus on the human sphere, the human's perspective in terms of the relation to nature, and also how humans used to define themselves, as opposed to our way of defining it is very often, or the modern way is very often a consciousness and a body. And if you're a religious person, you also have a soul. But the old Nordic perception of these things is a little bit different. It's I would say it's more complicated, and it's even more layered. There are more elements in that pot, and so this album kind of dives a little bit deeper into exploring some of these concepts.
That's fascinating. Compared to your previous Wardruna albums, I know the theme of nature was there quite a bit. Even as an example, say your the song Bjarkan, where last time you spoke with us, you mentioned that you made some of these sounds with a particular wood, a tree, something like that, and kind of those nature themes were always there. But the human side of it. So I've got two questions coming out of that. So first of all, why are you currently focusing more on the human side of it at the moment? And following on that a little bit, can you just tell us a little bit about the themes of the album?
Well, it's I guess because I find them interesting and intriguing, and something worth reflecting upon, not to say the least. And also I guess my work has always been founded and had a core of animism in it, in terms of the sacredness of nature and our part in it. But perhaps perhaps this is more. This album dives more directly and is perhaps a little bit more outspoken when it comes to it, and perhaps some of the themes, it's more clearly seen, both in not only in terms of those things, but perhaps also it becomes clearer that this is. That my music is, even though I work with things from the past, it's not a travel back in time. It's more like a visit from the past here, and I also feel that is perhaps a little bit more outspoken in this album, also based on the themes. It's quite philosophical, and sort of I try to decipher certain myths or traditions and go into what it actually means, and why it's worth remembering, why it's still useful, why it's still speaking to us in a sense. I don't know if that answers your question, or
That answers it very well, and in fact, what we are trying to explore on our show is something quite similar, and that is the lessons we can learn from mythology, from past lessons and stories. And it's interesting, you've certainly got mythological themes in your music in the past. Can you explain a little bit about how in this album you're bringing some of these stories that you mentioned that you're exploring?
Well, a very direct example would be, for instance, the song Moonin, which is, of course, the name of one of Odin's ravens. And of course, I could. It's based on knowledge that we have from myth and from poetry, and of course, I could have easily just recited that poem. But for me, that would sort of go a little bit against the way we work, because it's more about going deeper into it and deciphering it, and going into what it actually means. So the myth with Odin and his ravens is, of course, that the poem states that Odin sends his two ravens, Hugin, the mind or thought, and Munin, the memory, out into the world every day, and they collect information that they share with Odin upon their return. But the poem also states states that he's fearful that thought or Hugin will not return, but he fears even more that Munin won't return. And there it stops. It doesn't say why. So I wanted to go into the why. What is it with these birds, and why is he most fearful that Munin won't return? And of course, in many ways, the answer is quite simple, because there is no thought without memory, and we as species are historical, so historical in our beings, in what we fear, what we think, how we define culture, everything. And memory is such an essential part of that. Just to give you one example of how I work. So this song is basically almost like you can call it a kind of a memory study, in how, and also in terms of what I spoke earlier with these more layered definitions of a human, how they view themselves, and one of these pieces is actually mini, or memory. So it's viewed a little bit different than our modern interpretation of what memory is, which is for me a very logical thing. It makes a lot of sense. Also, how they regarded it.
Could you explain that difference?
Not off the top of my head, because I don't know the exact. I can't remember the exact definition of memory, but it is I guess it's more regarded as almost more physically regarded, or as part of you, in a slightly different way. It's not only your experiences, but it's more a defining factor in a way. But also in terms of other traditions, that other ways of I'm trying to think about other myths and mythology that is implemented in the album. Of course, we go into traditions regarding the Norns as well on this album, and very often when people think about Norns, they think about the mythological three Norns, and that's it. But the sources tell us that there aren't only three Norns, and this is something that is reflected in later tradition as well, that this is almost like a species of or a section of deities, and that seem to be very much related to birth, that time around birth, spinning life threads, or defining the fate. One hopes for a good Norn, and not one of the angry ones. That is So one of the songs goes deeper into this, and also sort of explores other things regarding also regarding one of the defining factors of a human, which is the concept of und or ond, which is basically means spirit, and it's the same word. Well, it also means breath, basically, and so this goes into something we see reflected in both mythology and other places here and there, from historical evidence, that this idea that the one's one spirit is connected to wind, which is a very fascinating subject in itself, I think.
So when you mention sources, what do you consider the sources that you use most often to inform your work?
Oh, they are many. That's a long list, Of course, primary sources is, of course, at the core, and then, of course, but not only. The conversion to Christianity here in Scandinavia wasn't a grassroots movement. That came from the top, and that means that basically people were continuing to doing what they had always been doing for such a long time. Certain things, even up until, if you go back like 100 or 50 years, a lot of these things were still alive, more so than today. Names might have changed, and different branches of certain traditions and myths have been created along the way, but so of course within the folklore there is a huge amount of information as well. Folklore, folk medicine, and folkloristic studies done like 200, 300, 400 years ago, they still contain a lot of interesting things for people who are interested in how our culture was further back in time as well. So and of course, going into academic studies is a big part of it as well. And also, I'm lucky in the sense that I have many friends within academia as well who that I can reach out to and discuss things and throw my ideas at or thoughts to, which is of course a great tool when working on these things. There are so many gaps and things we don't know for sure, but for me it's important to avoid climbing into trees that doesn't have any form of root, in the sense that standing on some form of solid ground before going into the more creative processes is very essential in how I work.
Would doing all this, is this kind of an expression of your own spirituality, or I guess, spirituality and understanding of the world as you see it?
On a personal level, of course, there is a spiritual aspect to it and a philosophical aspect, and quite simply like a human aspect of it, like personal development or whatnot, or reflection. And that, of course, comes through in a lot in my music and how I interpret things. But at the same time, I feel that many of these things apply whether or not you're a spiritual person or not, because so many of these ideas they're born out of our very surroundings, the surroundings we are still part of in a way, which kind of makes them relevant and still, well, they can potentially tell us the same things that once created this tradition or cultural element in the first place. So yeah, it is a spiritual thing, but I'm very wary of the fact that not everyone has that aspect to it. So I try not to I leave a lot of open space within my music. Also, when I write lyrics, I write them very open-ended, so you are able to find room for your own truth within it, and so that also it applies whether or not you have a spiritual approach to it or a more philosophical one, or yeah, whatever, that it can resonate, it can speak, it will make sense nonetheless.
That makes sense. And I know there, in the lead up to the release of this new album, you've got some episodes on the Wardruna channel on YouTube where you dig deep into, I guess, the thought process behind the album. One of the things you mentioned, and you've mentioned it today, is animism. And I was wondering if you could go into that a little bit and how that influences your music.
Yeah, animism. Well, of course, there are many ways of viewing it. And of course, the classical old school definition of animism is this idea that everything has a spirit or a frequency or an energy. That's kind of at the core of it. Animism is, of course, much more than that, and newer definitions perhaps will say it a little bit differently, or nuance it a little bit more. But I guess for me, if you boil it down to essence, it comes down to an idea that both apply to my spiritual being, but also the rest of my being, an attitude as well, is this idea that nature is something sacred, something that we are part of, and that is something I try to apply to everything I do, and how I see how I interact with it, or my general attitude. And I guess I hate preaching or that kind of thing, sort of claiming to know a truth, or I very much hate that. But if my music does have a message, I would say it's sort of subtly promotes an animist worldview, being that core, that idea that nature is something sacred, and the second we took that sacredness out of nature, we in my view went in a wrong direction. You start viewing yourself as the ruler of, rather than the protector of, and we have sort of broken the ring in a way, and put ourselves on top of it, and just the exploiters of it, with no respect or regard for its well-being. And that's problematic, no matter if you have a spiritual view on it, or just, it's an attitude that you can sort of go as deep as you want or don't want, but the core of it is very simple.
So maybe to touch on that from a slightly different perspective, we like to discuss mythologies and stories from an archetypal perspective, and one that is rooted in the duality of order and chaos, with nature necessarily being a part of chaos in the sense that it has the capability for both creation and destruction, and humanity and civilization as being order, symbolically order, in the sense that it's capable of bringing order to the world in a concrete sense, but also when you get too much order, when you get a tyranny, maybe you start to disregard the importance of that nature. is this a perspective that I suppose would be compatible with what you're talking about? Do you see things in a similar perspective, that duality between humanity and nature?
Yeah, and of course the balance between the chaos or logos or chaos or an order is of course very interesting, and something you see in nature. Nature is the teacher when it comes to those things. That ring of life, death, resurrection that we see every day in a way, and every year we see it so clearly. And definitely also one of the key ingredients in how I view the world, in a sense. And it's fascinating also to see this in how it shaped earlier traditions as well, where you have the balance between well, I would say our approach to it, or modern heathenry, we would think the opposite. We want the wild nature. We feel that is the sacred one. But for them, that was chaos. That was the chaos factor. That was an uncultivated ground, and for them, it was the cultivated. It was the fields that you sowed and reaped. The earth from that was the sacred earth that you used for healing or whatnot, or yeah. So, but it's interesting to see how these things change depending on the need, because of course now we are so removed from nature itself that we need the wild nature, because order has become, our desire to control the world has become too much, and so this romantic, well, back then they certainly didn't have a romantic relationship to nature, or a romantic idea about nature or wild nature. They were fighting nature. They were doing whatever they could to control it in order to survive. And I guess that strong need to control everything is what got us here in the first place. We succeeded in controlling it more and more and more, and then the balance is shifted off. So we are at a great imbalance now. Now we need more chaos, in a way. Chaos being the wild nature, the wild forces of nature, if you know what I mean. So, but it is very interesting to see how our relationship and how nature belief back then and now will necessarily be different, because the needs are different. We live in a completely different world, which is why certain things from the past doesn't really apply anymore. The pendulum has sort of shifted balance.
That makes sense. And I can't remember where I heard this first, but something I think we like to talk about is that, say, the Middle Ages Old Norse people would likely have welcomed advancements such as indoor plumbing and electricity and heating and things like that. But,
of course,
right. So I think the point that we try to make with that is more that there is a level of advancement that humanity collectively has undertaken to make life a lot better, but in doing so has maybe lost some of this connection to nature and some of the factors that would have motivated the spiritualities and the understandings of the world when nature was such a place that could kill you a lot easier, something like that. So can you maybe comment on that a little bit, just the idea that maybe we've advanced, and then kind of coming we've what we've lost, what do you think we've lost in doing that?
We did lose, of course, the I guess the connection to it in a way, but of course, for me, what sort of resonates, or well, I don't have a romantic idea about the past. This thought that everything was so much better back in the days. I think we have, having gone through that, and also being able to reflect and learn from the past and discuss things such as what you bring up here, allows us actually to do it better. There is, it's not like, it's gone too far and it's too late to return. What if you go through if you go through history from many different civilizations, you see that if something goes too far to one side, a counter reaction happens, either within nature or within the human species, or different. Yeah, it can be many different things. So I guess that's kind of the Ragnarok in a way, the death and rebirth of something, which is, yeah, history has shown us that is what happens very often, and that is, I guess, what we should hope for as well, that what we are a part of is a counter reaction to it, a wholesome, healthy counter reaction to it, to keep our comfort and the plumbing we so much adore, and all of those comfortable things, but do it better, do it in a way that doesn't take us out of that ring we need to be part of for this Earth to not succumb, and for all the other species on this planet to disappear in a way, because that would be horrible. And yeah, this idea that nature is sacred is, of course, and the fact that we are caretakers not only for us but for our children in a way. And that, of course, means we need to perhaps, we need to change. But a part of this is this dangerous idea that one individual, that you are too small to make a difference. That's a very dangerous thought, and it is a thought that I think too many people on this planet have. But the fact is that that's the only true thing you can do, is to begin with yourself and be the best version of you that you possibly can, based on what you know and what you think and what you hope for.
You've talked a little bit about getting back into the ring, so to speak, with humans and nature sort of working together rather than at odds, as we seem to do now. I can't help but think that we have all of this material security and wealth, but at the same time, at least in North America, like, the use of antidepressants is higher than it's ever been in the history of humankind. Everyone seems like unhappy, even though all of their basic needs are more or less taken care of. I'm wondering if, do you think removing ourselves from that ring contributes to that feeling of unhappiness? Like, I guess, what do you think the toll is on the human spirit if you remove yourself from that natural cycle?
The consequences are enormous, and is definitely a big part of what you're talking about. The reasons for the things you are talking about, and of course, well, there are different types of chaos. And the chaos we created, the order, the chaos that came out of the order we so much desired, is a different chaos than the one that nature provides. So I guess that's we first need to separate those two, or at least clear up that when I say chaos, I mean the wildness, nature, the natural form of things. We of course need more of that. That is medicine. If you are depressed, you can. It is not. It's not airy fairy mumbo jumbo. It's fact. Go out into the woods, see and hear and smell, and it is actual medicine. Staring into a fire is medicine. It does something to you. So that's fact, and that's of course only a small part of it. And but there are other things. Something else that I discuss on this album is our relationship to predators, and particularly the wolf, where we took out, basically eradicated the wolf from Norway, for instance, and I know many other places, and you have the same thing going on over there, where when you take something out of the food chain, one of your biggest competitors in a way. And there are of course enormous waves you create throughout nature in different rings, and in different I can't remember the name, ecosystems, when you take off the head of it, and and my approach to it is not a romantic one. I'm not saying that the wolf is so beautiful. Of course, we need the wolf, and that everything with the wolf is unproblematic. And I understand the issue. I acknowledge the issue that it has a cost of having the wolf as part of society or other predators. It has a cost, but anything of true value has a cost, and it's a cost we should be willing to pay. I think it would be healthy for us humans to be a little bit scared when we're out in the forest. I think that would be one of the medicines for the depression, because friction is a very fruitful and powerful thing that we need in our lives. It's a healthy thing, but it's not necessarily a comfortable thing. But acknowledging those sides, and the cost, acknowledging the cost and the value as well, is something we really should do, and that goes to, of course, a much bigger picture as well.
I've got a few thoughts here. So one of the things with your music that I know of, the people that I know who listen to it and love it, they often talk about kind of getting a transcendent feeling while listening to it. And I know for myself that's true as well. Do you think perhaps, and I know humility might prevent you from answering this fully, but do you think offering a transcendent experience and talking about these things like nature and the importance of being part of the ring might help people get past that need for comfort and more willing to pay the cost to have that feeling of being alive?
Well, I certainly hope that our work can contribute and can be that bridge for people, and I know that it is a bridge for I see that people often connect to it on a deeper level, and that it awakes something, a sense of coming home in a way, or remembering something that was always there but forgotten in a way. And I think that I do think that there is there are many explanations why that happened. It's one thing is, since since there is this enormous longing for some form of connectiveness, I think globally, the fact that my music or our music is born out of traditions that is again born out of the very nature we surround us with. Even though the wrapping is Old Norse, the mechanisms that created these nature-based cultures, they are global. If you go far enough back in time, you see how strikingly similar the themes I'm singing about is to other cultures as well. And even when you study the musicology, when you go far enough back in time, you also see how strikingly similar and how primal some of these things really are for us as a species, regardless of geography. And so I think many of these things are so coded so deeply within our DNA or our being that tapping into this musically and being connecting to the music might trigger and might be or function as sort of a bridge to feeling that connectiveness that so many people are longing for. I guess that's what I'm longing for as well when I write these songs. It's or tapping into that connectiveness to the place we are a part of. If that answers your question.
Definitely. It actually it reminds me. There's actually like a subgenre on YouTube of people reacting to a performance you have of Helvegen with, I think it's Aurora, and you'll see people like actually like weeping, and they can't understand. Like, it's not they can't understand, but they don't know what the words mean because they haven't looked up the lyrics in English. But they definitely have this reaction. Like when they're done, they're kind of stunned and changed, and it's actually quite fun to watch because one, I have that feeling as well. But I think you're right. You're connecting to that need for connection around the world.
Yeah, and the tools that I'm using are so ancient and so global in many ways that it has that potential to connect no matter where you come from or what cultural or social background you have or ethnicity. It goes so far back in time. A lot of these tools that I'm using and concepts I'm working with. And of course, it's an interesting thing that we've seen since the very first concerts we did. That people, they react very strongly to it often in a live setting, and but also traveling around in the world, we quickly saw that people reacted in the same way, in the same parts. No matter if they understood the words or not, that it's the music sort of transcends those barriers in a way, which is very interesting to bestow and to be part of. Very fascinating.
Here's kind of I guess a weird question, but do you ever find yourself having that experience with your own music?
Of course. I don't create music for you guys. I create it for me, and that's the core of it. I make the music. I sing the songs that I want to hear. That's how it's always been. That's why I started this project as well. I've had this need to hear this music that dealt with these things on their own premises. I could hear it, I could feel it in a way, and have been chasing it ever since in many in a way. And and so when I create my songs, I don't think about the listener. I think about myself and what it is I want to hear myself. So I gladly admit that I both have strong emotions and I very much enjoy listening to my own music. That's I think that should be a premise for any musician, that you really truly love your own your own art. That should be like the first point to tick off before releasing it out into the world, I think. And also, it's important for me that it is born out of something genuine, something honest, and yeah, there needs to be some form of nourishment, and it's not only about what you say, it's about how you say it, and what. Yeah, if you want to reach the heart of someone, you need to sing from the heart. Just to put it very straightforward, but that applies to many elements of it, and that's part of what sorcery used to be like as well. That merging between at least oral sorcery, that merging between emotion, the words becoming the words, and intention, spirit for some people, but they need to be one. That merging, when these things are one, that's when things happen that one would define as sorcery occurs. And that's when you're able to create change or speak to people or reach people.
The album itself ties into yourself personally in a different way too, as I understand it. The Kvitravn, that's also a part of your artistic identity as well. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah. First, I have to say the album is not named after me. Just to make that clear, I'm not on a giant ego trip here, but perhaps goes more into what inspired me to take that name in the first place, and to separate it. That's why there are no practical reasons for spelling the two different versions differently. It means the same, but I wanted to have some form of separation, so people would know that it's not about me directly, at least. But no, I do have a very strong connection and fascination on a almost totemic level towards the raven itself, and yeah, it's such a on so many levels it's such a fascinating creature. And I guess on this album, well, the combination of the raven itself, everything it represents, being the sort of the bridge between the world, the one that carries the dead across, the animal embodiment of the human mind and memory, the trickster. I would say if the Norse ever had a totem, it would be the raven. And I don't know, that in itself is so powerful. And then you apply these sacred white animals to it, which is a global phenomenon. You have them in the Native American myths, in Greece, in Norse tradition, in African traditions, and so on. The list goes on and on, not only with ravens, but with many other animals. And they, what seems to be the common thing is that they, of course, are seen as sacred, as spirits in a way, as someone who moves beyond these borders of the different realms, but also they often come with a prophecy that the return represent, or a meeting with them represents some form of change, enlightenment, or can be different things, but very often it's a positive thing. And these sacred white animals are often used within folk medicine or sorcery as well. And so that combination of the two, the coming of the return, or sending the white raven into the world again, is for me, I don't know, it's a powerful symbol, and perhaps on some level contains an element of hope, or sowing a seed in the desire of creating a change, or contributing to some form of change by sending the White Raven into the world again.
So is that what the album title refers to then?
Absolutely.
This is the Raven that you're sending out into the world with an intent to affect change then as well.
Well, the only thing you can do is to sow a seed, and I'm nurturing it with songs, with my songs, and then it lives its own life, and yeah, it's not like I'm trying to save the world or anything like that, but it is a both a symbolic act and a hope, I guess. And I do believe in power of well, like I said before, things need to have if I don't have anything to say, then I won't say it either. Then that will be the end of Wardruna, I think. But as long as I have things I want to share, and I can remind people about, or myself about things from the past that is worth remembering, then I will continue to do so. And I guess this is part of that.
So I guess I've got to ask, do you consider yourself a sorcerer?
Yes and no. No, I don't. I don't. The people who that's not a title you give yourself. That's a shaman, or a vulva, or a vitki, or a witch. That's a title somebody else gives you, and a role in society. It's not something you can sort of claim on your own. That's the people around you, or the society around you, that must regard you as that, and you must have a function as that to carry such a thing. And so I think the first hint of a false prophet, or a false shaman, or a witch is that they give that title to themselves. So, but I most certainly do things that practice things that would be considered sorcery, or various esoteric arts, for sure. But I don't have a need for a title, or have a need to define it as anything special. Yeah, my medium is my songs, in a way. That's the direction I give it, where I focus it.
Well, the reaction to your songs and to your music, I think, speaks to the profound impact that you've had on so many people, and who have found your music and resonated with it. And so I think maybe the exact words of that you've used, shaman, vulva, things like that, maybe that's not what the collective consciousness of your listeners might exactly describe you as, and your music as, but you have had a profound impact. And I think this album is going to have a profound impact similar to your previous work. Is there anything, because I know we're a bit short on time here, but is there anything that about this album, in a short sentence or something very specific, that you hope your listeners take away from it?
I hope, if I am to say one thing, I do hope people, you can enjoy my music, or our music, without necessarily go read the lyrics, or go into that part of it, but you do lose a dimension, or to put it in a different way, by doing it, you add a dimension to it, and it will allow you to dive deeper into certain things that might be of value. Hopefully, will be of value, and also for people who are more nerdy into into these things from our past ways. And a lot of the songs are packed with really obscure details from the darkest corners of our source material at hand. So can pique the curiosity and inspire to further develop both an interest and a knowledge base in terms of many of these more esoteric things from the old Nordic culture. So I would definitely recommend people to have a look and dive deeper into that part of the album as well.
We are definitely those nerds.
Good. Good. I like nerds.
Yeah, that seems to be just about everything that we're trying to explore in our own show, and so I hope our listeners would get to similarly explore based on your work and your songs. I think we need to let you go here, but it's been really great to talk with you. It's been wonderful to hear your perspective on your own music and on the impact that you hope to see with it, and wish you great success with this album. We've certainly enjoyed listening to the preview and excited to hear it come out January 22nd.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thanks for inviting me.
Well, thank you again. We'll let you go now, but really appreciate you coming on our show and telling us about the album.
Yes, thank you very much.
Pleasure is mine. So have a great day and or night, or I guess it's daytime where you're at.
Yeah.
You have a good evening. Thank you again, and stay
thank
safe
you.
and healthy.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, Dan, that was something else, hey? That was a great conversation with Einar. I'm thrilled that we got to speak with him about so many topics, and I can't wait for the album to come out.
Absolutely. That was incredible. I've got I guess chills isn't quite it, but like definitely feeling something. It was an amazing conversation. And I think we really got to see what Einar's all about, and it makes his already great music that much better. Or it, like he says, it adds another dimension to it, so that you can enjoy it on a whole bunch of different levels. I can't wait for this album to come out. I'm going to be watching all of those songs that are already on YouTube on repeat now, like until it for 2 days now. So it'll be great.
It will be great. And, I really enjoyed the ways he was explaining his perspective and even things about his process. I'd love if we could get another chance to talk with him in the future. It was one of those times where it was like question after question after question. We could have kept going for a long, long time.
Definitely. And like you said, life is long, hopefully. So I'm sure our paths will cross again.
Certainly hope so. Definitely. Well, and I think that's about it for us for today. And definitely check out the album Kvitravn by Wardruna, coming out January 22nd. That's 2 days after the release of this episode, if you're listening right away. And if you are listening right away, you can check out 3 songs already on YouTube. And I believe that's Kvitravn, Groll, and Skugge are the songs that are released as of the time of recording anyway, which is about a week ago before releasing. And I think that's about all I have. Dan, anything else to add after that conversation?
Not really, other than just would love to talk to him. We could probably do this for hours with him. So no, great to talk to him. And yeah, this album is going to be, as the kids say, a banger.
Perfect. Couldn't have put it better myself. Awesome. Well, I think before we go here, just one last note for our listeners. Hope you're safe and healthy. We're in a bit of a heavy lockdown, which has necessitated our remote recording here, but I think it's gone okay, and we might be able to do some more episodes like this while we're still in lockdown. No end in sight to that, unfortunately. At least no firm end date. So we'll see what we can do on that. And yeah, if you'd like to get in touch with us, we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Northern Myths or Northern Myths Podcast on all of those platforms. You can also email us at northernmythspodcast@gmail.com. And the best way you can support the podcast is our Patreon, and that's patreon.com/northernmyths. And as we mentioned earlier, we only charge if we have a new episode coming out, and it goes to things like our hosting costs and just keeping the lights on here at Northern Myths Podcast. So that's what that goes towards supporting. And finally, just another shout out to our good friends at Grimfrost, and they're our favorite retailer of Viking themed merchandise, whether it's modern day apparel that just have some really awesome designs. I've got some of their gym gear recently, which I really enjoy. My wife has some too, and other things like reenactment level gear that's accurate to the past, drinking horns, beard oil. There's lots of great stuff on their website. So if you're a fan of our show, we're sure that you can find something that you like. So go to grimfrost.com and join the horde. And with that, I think that's everything, Dan, unless there's anything I'm missing.
Well, there is one thing, and it's the most important thing, and that's to go out and find the myth you're living. This has been the Northern Myths Podcast. Thanks for listening.